Welcome to Dial It In, a podcast where we talk with fascinating people about marketing, sales, process improvements, and tricks that they use to grow their businesses. Join me, Dave Meyer, and Trygve Olsen of BusyWeb as we bring you interviews on how the best in their fields are dialing it in for their organizations. Let's ring up another episode. Welcome to our summer recap series on our favorite episodes from the Dial It In podcast. We're recapping, and we asked some of our staff members to highlight their favorite episodes. Today, Danielle highlights Steve Rice. Steve Rice was a personal favorite of Danielle's because she loved the mix of sustainability speak in combo with how his personality encompassed exactly what he preached. He asks thought-provoking questions throughout the podcast and highlights his ideas with fun personal anecdotes. Now, Danielle says she remembers seeing his bio pictures and immediately started smiling because it was real. It was a refreshing change of pace from all the traditional pictures that we tend to get sent as our podcast is produced. He has a big smile and a glass of beer just as big, and he looked like someone that Danielle would enjoy meeting. Throughout the episode, there were a few highlights that Danielle highlighted for us. Steve points out the fact that his shirt is 8 years old and his pants are 20 years old. He embodies sustainability even in what he wears. He shows that bad business and unethical practices directly affect your company and its consumers, and not in a good way. He states that the worst businesses are often putting toxins in the air that harm us and that they frequently see high turnover rates for a reason. And one of Steve's most impactful statements for Danielle was, if you wouldn't want it happening to your granddaughter, don't do it. She loved this immensely. Steve has a ton of great advice throughout the episode, and we love the value that the episode brings to the world. Whether your company is actively planning sustainable changes or not, this episode brings a more impactful, eco-friendly mindset to light. Enjoy Steve Rice, and see you next week.
I have to admit, I learned about today's guest, and this is somebody that you booked. I would not have picked that from you.
Oh, I think you're in for an actual treat.
I was a huge fan of Interview with the Vampire in the 90s. And I read the whole books, the whole book series, the Lestat series.
I think you've got the wrong Rice.
I didn't even know she was still writing.
No, this is a he, and he's a delightful.
Oh, it's a he.
He's a delightful human, and you're going to be super excited to meet with him.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Dial It In. I'm Trygve. He's Dave. Today's episode is sponsored by Fractional Tactical. As a fractional CMO, your number one goal is to deliver success to each of your clients. With limited time and limited resources, you need marketing solutions that are data-proven, easy to execute, and repeatable. BusyWeb understands the unique challenges marketing executives face. That's why we offer customized solutions for our fractional CMO partners. You tell us the results you need, and we create the strategy and MarTech stack to get there. You have a concrete plan, your clients have measurable results, and you look good. We help you get there. Everyone wins by visiting fractionaltactical.com today to find your tactical marketing partner. So wait a minute. You said it was a he. I think I know what you're getting at, because I know what we're talking about today is ethical leadership. So you're talking about the guy that quarterbacked Notre Dame to their last national championship in 1988, right? Tony Rice?
I don't think so.
All right.
This is a much better Rice. And
I got nothing then.
That end, maybe I should just do the intro and let you catch up.
Yeah, okay. I clearly need a better AI robot to...
Have you ever noticed, Trygve, with a name like yours and people always getting confused about your name, that most of our bits at the beginning of these are you missing the names on people?
Yeah, I don't claim the comedy is good, Dave, just that there's plenty of it.
Absolutely. I am so thrilled to introduce our audience to Steve Rice. Steve is a good friend of mine and a business strategist and advocate for sustainable leadership. Through his work with the Globally Conscious Leader and .com Jungle, Steve helps businesses align their technology, operations, and leadership strategies to achieve their long-term goals. With decades of experience in organizational growth and digital transformation, Steve specializes in guiding leaders to navigate the complexities of technology adoption while fostering sustainable practices. At .com Jungle, Steve has helped numerous businesses choose and implement the right tools for operational excellence. His work with the Globally Conscious Leader emphasizes balancing profitability with purpose, inspiring leaders to create meaningful and lasting impacts. Steve's unique blend of technical expertise and visionary leadership has made him a trusted partner for organizations looking to scale responsibly and sustainably. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Dave and Trygve. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to say, as much as I'm happy to be here, I'm really disappointed that you guys forgot one salient fact about me. And I am the first athlete to be elected into the Hall of Fame in both baseball and football. So you got to get your rice cleared up.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So you're talking about
I
Jerry?
can't believe you missed that.
Sorry.
And Jim.
Yeah.
Jim Rice. Oh,
And
my
Jim.
goodness.
Okay. Yeah. Jim Rice played for the Red Sox.
Yes. And we could go all day, but I don't want to get into the San Francisco treat or any of that stuff because that's way deep in the.
Condoleezza was another person who had a
Oh,
last name.
great.
Yeah.
That would have been less fun. I'm so delighted to have you here, Steve, because we've had lots of great conversations over the years. And what I'm always left with you is that the idea, especially the globally conscious leader side of your business and what you do, you're really all about walking the talk. And the things that you talk about and that you share in Globally Conscious Leader, and of course through .com Jungle, have been instrumental. And I never miss a post. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Well, clearly I have it wrong. So what is it you do?
I run .com Jungle is the first company that I started and basically focuses on technology. If you'd asked me when I was 16 or 20 or 22, what I would be doing, I would tell you I would have been a fisheries biologist. So how I ended up here is a non-linear but linear story. And basically, Globally Conscious Leader grew out of my understanding or experience in .com Jungle, where I was learning this as I was understanding that bad technology makes everybody in a business look bad, right? And good technology makes everybody look good, except the people who either need to be moved somewhere else, or maybe they need to get a job at Taco Bell or something. And when I started fixing those issues in businesses that I was managing at the time before I started .com Jungle, and then into .com Jungle, I also, once we started fixing those problems, started realizing that the next step is that there are communication systems and that those make people look bad too. So it's not a matter of technology at that point. It's a matter of process and understanding and listening. So that's how I connected those.
Amazing. So as we talk about leadership and how leaders adapt to changing business landscapes, there's been a lot of upheaval and a lot of change in how leaders interact and connect. I think when we started chatting, Steve, it was before COVID and the whole work from home movement, and now the return to office movement is in full swing. So that's been a lot of big changes. How do you ethically and responsibly lead organizations, especially when there's all this turmoil in the office?
I think maintaining a process of communication that you have regardless of the technology you're using, and making sure that your technology supports that process is probably key. We all know, we're doing it right now, you can talk just as easily over Zoom or some other video chat as you can in person. Maybe you miss some body clues or whatnot, but when it comes down to it, accountability is always one of the most important things in a business, and not just for the owner or the business itself, but for ourselves. We feel good about ourselves when we have accountability, take accountability, and follow through on time. The businesses that I saw who were really successful, that in the switch over, call it March 15th, 2020 was a big day. Everybody went home. And one of my clients basically shut their doors on the 10th. They sent everybody home with pay. And they were thinking about this ahead of time because we were talking about it with them anyway, not knowing the pandemic was going to happen. But they basically shut the doors, got their entire tech team together, talked about communication and what they were going to do, bought into Microsoft's platform, then brought everybody back in for a week. They still did no business. All they did is train people how to use that tool. So the technology barriers are out of the way. And when they came back to work, basically, I could call it 2 weeks paid vacation, but it didn't count against their vacation time. Everybody knew how to use the tool, and they already had their communication mechanisms in place, the way they talk to each other, how they answer questions, how they phrase things. And so they were up and running and faster than any other business that I dealt with by far. And they were already at that time updating their entire supply chain because they had a major factory in China that did most of their pre-assembly and manufacturing, and a smaller one in Thailand. And they just pivoted radically and quickly without a lot of disruption. So the short answer is, if you've got a good culture in place, because culture beats strategy, as they say, eats it for lunch, that culture should span across technology as long as you teach the technology correctly.
The weird part for me during that time is we've been a mostly virtual company for a while. And so everybody else's Monday was a new world order, and mine was just Monday.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everybody flocked to all sorts of different channels, and everybody flocked to doing all sorts of automated tools, and all of it was universally bad. One of the things that Dave and I do for our day job is we host a webinar, and we're both individually and together very good at it, but it's a learned skill to do it well. And almost everybody, the world just became so incredibly noisy almost overnight.
And it really is still.
Yeah, and it's never really gone away, especially with the advent of AI, where now all of a sudden AI is writing content for you, but it also starts with the same line every time. Like, I will immediately reject anybody who sends me an email that says, "I hope this email finds you well." It didn't. So why am I even going to talk?
Or, "Hi, quote, name, just kidding."
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not funny. As you advise companies on balancing technology and growth, the communication externally and internally is so incredibly important. How do you balance always wanting to be on the cutting edge with things just being enough?
Well, I think this is an interesting answer to that question, because I work mostly with manufacturers, in food manufacturers, outdoor industry, especially weird metal things that get sold to the Air Force and Boeing and whatnot. And for their production, they're totally state of the art and ahead of the curve. For their business processes and whatnot, their job is not to be at the leading edge of technology. Most of these companies, I'll say, they're somewhere, when they come on board to me, they might be somewhere between 2004 and 2010 in terms of their ERP, maybe their marketing. And my job isn't to take them in 2025 to 2027. It's to maybe get them up to 2019 or 2020, because they can actually ride that for another 7 to 8 years. 7 to 8, not 78.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, like I said, when it comes to R&D and design, they've got to be ahead. And when it comes to marketing, they've got to be on the nose, which is why they need someone like BusyWeb and you guys. But when it comes to the keeping track of everything, that we haven't changed much. Like, the way someone tracks WIP and offshore products coming in and supply chain, what we do is almost exactly the same. We just have computers to count the numbers for us. Essentially, ERPs, or how someone runs their enterprise part in the finances behind the scenes, that hasn't changed in a long time.
Well, for people who are listening who don't know what an ERP is, can you give us 3 sentences on what an ERP is?
Yes. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It helps you track all the raw materials that you buy as they come through your business, get made into products, and get sold out the door, so that your finances can track all that too. That was 2 sentences. One was very compound.
That was perfect. So what I think is fascinating, and I've always enjoyed chatting with you about, Steve, is especially for your outdoor brands that you represent, and I know we don't have to name names or anything, but you represent some of the absolute biggest in your biz. And it's very much a business of needing to manage the manufacturing side and keeping tabs on them, on the ERP and what's happening, but also helping them market and go to market with some of these products. So can you share like a couple of stories? And again, we don't have to name names. I remember from our chats that you have just fascinating conversations about how some of these big companies have had to tweak things and some of the ways that you've been able to get better results by making small adjustments.
Yeah, I think one of the more interesting stories I can tell is a company that I worked with that when I came on board, they had just hired their first marketing director. And it was an internal hire from operations. They, of course, had marketing before, and they were entirely a B2B company selling to REI, Dick's, Cabela's, that kind of stuff, right? And they also were selling internationally. This is an internationally recognized company. Like they sell to GM, all the major car companies, every major manufacturing facility in the United States probably has one of their products in their building, one or two or five. And my first few conversations with the CEO, we talked about B2C stuff. And he literally looked at me and he said, we're never going to sell direct to consumer. We're never going to have a forum or a blog. I don't need a marketing team for all of that. And I looked at him, and he was an old friend. And I said, in 5 years, we're going to look back at this conversation and we're going to laugh. And now it's 15 years later. That company has, I think they're about 8 or 9x where they were back then. They sold their wholesale division to a local company, a local guy who used to run their company back in the 90s. And now they're entirely direct to consumer and absolutely killing it. And of course, their margins went from 50% to 75 and 80% when they went direct to consumer. And I believe the marketing team, outside of the actual manufacturing or assembly teams that are on the work floor, is the largest department in their company.
Wow.
So
it's amazing how just one little tweak can make all the difference if you're open to it.
yeah, that one was a lot of little tweaks. Just the first idea of making a consumer product has to be hurdled. Yeah.
One of the things that you talked about a couple of times, and I know that in reading your website, is you talk about sustainability. And I think that's one of those Dickens words. Dickens in A Christmas Carol says, enough is the most enigmatic word in the English language because it means something different to everybody. So I was thinking about that as I thought about sustainability. And are you just talking about environmental, or are you talking about what does sustainability mean to you and the companies you work for?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that in that way. And I love that question, because a sustainable business, I think, should be sustainable from an environmental standpoint. But also, if you want to be a sustainable business, you have to have a sustainable workforce, and you have to have a sustainable supply chain, and you have to be flexible. You have to have a sustainable R&D department. I don't think you can get away with having a business where you don't come out with new products, because someone's leapfrogging you every day. So in a sense, Trygve, the answer to your question is all things need to be sustainable. The other piece for me that really drives what I'm trying to teach people is that while it is hard work to do this, it's only because it's hard work to run a business. It's not more difficult to run a good business than it is to run a bad business. In fact, I would make the case that it's easier. And a bad business accidentally kills people with toxins. A bad business has a very high turnover rate. Bad business has HR problems. And there's plenty of people who are maybe watching this, and clients that I've worked with who all of a sudden they turn around and they look and they go, wow, you're right. We have a 30% turnover a year here. Why is that? One, it's very costly, right? It costs, basically, you do the math, it's 6 to 12 months salary, average salary, to hire somebody and train them. So every time somebody leaves, what costs you 40 to 120 grand, guess, something like that. That's expensive if everybody's leaving all the time. And sometimes it's hard for an executive to find out that it's them, because most often culture starts at the top. But I've also been in business where the executive understood that they had limitations, right? And they knew that maybe they were a hothead and they didn't see things all the way, sometimes because they were the one who invented something with their hands 30 years ago. And they love working with their hands. And now they're managing 120 or 160 people. And the smart ones say, okay, yeah, I do. I am a hothead. I sometimes make poor decisions because I'm not thinking full ahead. I'm not listening to people. So I'm going to put a team in place that is better than me. I call that the George Washington model, where it said, I wasn't that great. I just surrounded myself with great men.
So I think that leads to the most interesting concept of sustainability, which is sustainable growth. And I think that's where Dickens comes back into play, because I think that means something different to everybody. So when somebody comes to you and says, I want help growing, typically when they come to me, what they say is, oh, I want double. No, you don't. Because if I give you 100 new customers, you can't actually work them all.
Yeah.
How do you help companies figure out what's sustainable is one word. I think practical and realistic is another word for a growth model.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help them figure out what's best for them?
Well, I'm a big proponent of an agile style communication model within a company at all levels. I'm not a big...
So let's talk about that, because before you go on, because I think agile communication style is great, but not everybody knows what that is. So can you break that down a little?
Yeah, I'll put it into context by noting there's two main ways to manage a project. There are modifications inside each, and that I think everybody can understand. When a contractor goes to build a house, they have to figure out how many square feet, how many rooms, how many board feet of this, how many board feet of that, how much of plumbing PEX they need to put in the building. They have to figure out everything in advance because they have to cost that out. And so they're doing all their discovery beforehand with the architect and everybody else. And then, just forgot the name, waterfall. They have a waterfall style, meaning you have to do this. Let's see, go this side. You have to do this first before you do this, before you do this. And as you move along, the stuff you have to do gets less and less. But you can't put the roof on over here before you put the foundation in here. That's waterfall project management, essentially. And every contractor has to do it. You will not find a contractor doing agile project management, which I'll explain in a second, because then I always think of the I Love Lucy episode where she decides the bathroom should move and she starts moving stakes around the ground. That doesn't work if you're trying to build a house. Agile project management is actually really good for things that you don't really know the answers to. And most of us, when we're, especially in design work, computer design work, programming and whatnot, we don't always know how we're going to get there. It's why we invented the idea of user stories. It's not how we get there. It's what the user experience is at the other end. That's basically where Steve Jobs went with the iPhone and the iMac. And it's where Simon Sinek means. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. So agile project management, you do some discovery. You like, we know we're going to make some device that people can carry around, but we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. And you get all the smartest people in your company together, and maybe they go off into their own little agile meetings, but it's a lot of brainstorming, and it's a lot of, you're looking at a list saying, these 3 or 4 things are the most important things we need to do. We can't even do that until we do these. So you have dependencies. And agile project management allows you to pivot really fast. So when people say fail fast and move on, that's basically agile project management, especially in technology, because what you know now is obsolete 9 months from now. So you might be developing the new iPhone for a particular chip, but 6 months from now, NVIDIA is going to come out with one that's faster, that's the same price, and you're going to need to change your architecture. In agile project management, you can do that easy, not easier. So
perfect. So thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure that everybody who was listening and was jiving with your answer. So you were talking about sustainable growth, and how do you model that out for individual people?
First of all, I'd tell people like you do. No, you don't want 2x. You don't want 10x. Also, there are gobs, millions, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands or millions of stories of angel investors coming in, saying, we're going to make investments. We're going to help you do this. We want 10x. And like within 2.5 years, they're out of business because their model, that is not a sustainable model. It's for the angel investor, it's a mathematics and investment model that works for them because 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 of those is going to make them several million. And I have a little bit of beef about angel investors because I've seen them come in and completely destroy businesses in small town America a lot.
VCs are probably the ones that are most dangerous at that, right? Where they come in and are like, oh yeah, we have our little investment house and yeah, we want to run through it and you're going to go, and the whole thing where we need to 10x and get out.
Yeah.
Is that whole short-term method or thinking that gets most of corporate America in trouble.
And they're most excited about it. And believe me, I get it. And I'm not saying they're all evil. I'm just saying, like, for the needs of small town businesses, that's actually not what small town business needs. Small town business needs people who are going to come in and say, okay, we've got a 20-year model here and we'll do 10x in 20 years. And our exit strategy is to grow this business in a reasonable, smart way, to make it more efficient, to be a better business, get our turnover from 30% to 7, have things like that. That's how you make a sustainable business. And the model is maybe when the original owner passes away at 93, it gets sold to the employees as a key ops, and everybody who was an investor before totally wins. And they win along the way because they're helping run a business that's making money, kicking off cash the whole time for 20 years, and then they get a bonus at the end.
But you're not going to buy a yacht off of that as an investor.
If you did that right 19 out of 20 times instead of 1 out of 20, you'd be buying yachts.
Right.
For sure. And you'd also be creating a lot more jobs, a lot more affluence in the community. You'd have a bigger influence over if you want to have influence over the economies of small town America, own 1,000 businesses. Don't just be a Walmart. Nothing against Walmart, but I won't buy from them just because I buy a shirt and it lasts me about 8 months. Whereas like this shirt, I think is 8 years old, and the pants I'm wearing are 20 years old. They're from the outdoor industry that cares about, once again, Trygve can answer your question, sustainability. There's a lot of aspects to sustainability. It's where you get your products, what they're made out of, how they're made, what kind of waste comes out of that process, if any, how it gets to you, how long it lasts is really important, and how repairable it is. And Patagonia has this dialed. And I'm not saying that they know exactly what to do now and they're always going to do it, but what they have dialed is the ability to pivot when they learn something new along that path. And I'll give you an example. When they first started making sleeping bags, they have a set of parameters that they scale, I think, on a scale of 1 to 10. And it has 1 to 10, like how sustainable is the fabric, or how bad is it for the environment, and how much material does it take to make this? Is it recyclable? And at some point, they made these sleeping bags that were great sleeping bags, and people started sending them in for repair, and they realized that the way that they had constructed them made them have to remove too much stuff from the bag. It took way too long to repair it, and it ended up wasting down and wasting other materials. And they added another thing. This is agile. They were agile enough to add another parameter that said, what we make needs to be repairable. And if it's not above a 7 or 8 on our scale of 1 to 10, we will not make it. Sustainability means a lot of things.
I think that's fascinating because in an era of time where everything is falling apart quickly, like I recently shopped for a washer dryer, and the person I met was saying they're meant to last about 5 years. I have to drop $2,000 on something that's going to last 5 years, and I can,
The American and then therefore the world appliance market is in the same spot that the American car manufacturers were in 1980. They're making things for planned obsolescence. And part of that, unfortunately, is some of the federal guidelines about how to make things, but mostly they're just going for the bottom. They're going for the bottom line. And even I have my own repair guy in town, and I said, is it really worth it to buy a Viking or a KitchenAid X, Y, and Z? And he said, they're all made by the same company. You get the exact same thing in white with a different logo for the same price. And he's like, their parts are interchangeable. So yeah, the Viking looks awesome and it has big heavy metal on it and stuff, like you pay for that. But underneath, it's planned obsolescence, and it's actually frustrating repair people because they actually want to help people repair. I actually have a washing machine. The guy came over and he said, that problem you have is totally not fixable. So ride this into the sunset. He actually said, like an old Buick. And when it actually stops turning, then call me.
And I think what's so interesting is we rolled back to like things 4 or 5 years ago is companies have figured out that the subscription model, the old gym model really works for just about anything. That, if you're paying less per month, but you're continuing to pay it every month, whether or not you're using it or not, it doesn't really matter. And I think you find that especially in apps and new phones is you almost have to get a new phone every 2 years now.
Yeah. We definitely live in a world where from a monetary standpoint, it's like getting pecked to death by ducks. You're like, okay, I'll pay the $4.99 for BritBox. I'll pay the $9.99 for Hulu. I'll pay the $14.99 for Netflix or whatever. But it's every single thing is like that. And I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is, except just chill out and you don't have to subscribe to everything.
and maybe this doesn't apply to you, Dave, but for me, generationally, it's very hard because I have a 10-year-old at home and I have Hulu and I have Netflix and I have this, that, and the other thing. And we watched a show on TV once and he's cool. Let's watch the next episode. I was like, we can't. We have to wait till next week. And he said, why? I said, because they only come out once a week. Why? And I didn't really have a good answer for that. So when he says there's nothing on TV, that's just a disgusting answer because everything's on TV right now.
Right.
Do you have that problem with your kids? Dave, because Dave has older kids than I do.
Yeah, a little bit. And the dual screen thing is a bigger problem, I think, with my kids, because they'll watch any episode and they actually love going back into deep catalogs and watching things that I never would have thought they were interested in. But they're constantly on their phone snapping and sending notes and reviewing things and Googling and all of that stuff as they're watching. So attention is so much different now than what it was when we were growing up. And Steve, you have kids as well. Are they plugged in?
Yeah, but they're not as, they're able to silo their activities for the most part. The younger ones, especially, there's certain things they really love, and they watch a lot of anime. They're very into music, as I am. Do I have a?
Yeah,
we do. Beautiful guitars in the background.
Yeah, we all play instruments and play music together. And I went, for some reason, maybe it's because we grew up in a really small town in Oregon. They did. Actually, I did too. I was not an adult when I was here, even though I was 24. There's a lot of outdoor activities we do, and you just put your phone away. And not as much for us. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just the way my kids are. And one of my kids is one of the leading hurricane forecasting people for highly technical and technology oriented. And you won't find him sitting on his phone. Yeah.
What?
So Steve, looping back on sustainable leadership and across the work that you've done over the years, it seems like the core shift that we're seeing is that things get more just flexible and or transient, I guess. So there's we expect washers and dryers not to last as long. We expect our clothing to, wear out. And that is now moving into, just being selfish, our marketing and how we approach how we engage with people, because it's more of a bright flash in the pan versus a long relationship that you have, especially with consumer brands. So there's a lot of trendiness in fashion, whether it's outdoor fashion or just old school, like straight up Dior or whatever. So how would you recommend with your clients balancing the need to be quote unquote viral with the need to share that you have a quality product that's meant to stand the test of time?
It might be a self-fulfilling prophecy for me, because I don't attract, nor do I say yes to companies who are in the disposable fashion industry. And if someone actually came to me and was sincere that they didn't want to be doing that anymore, there'd be a lot of conversations. But that world, there's always going to be people who respond to that. There's always going to be people who respond to, I need the lowest price thing from Walmart. And I can't blame them. And I don't think anybody can. If you're making $15 an hour and the government thinks that you're not below the poverty line, you're scraping by. And I don't expect you to go buy a pair of Patagonia pants. I can tell you that if you did, it's hard to make that investment up front. But I think one of the favorite quotes was, you can buy it now and cry later, or you can cry now and not buy again later. But the self-fulfilling prophecy part is that people who come to me, they want to do that. They don't want to be part of the disposable fashion economy. They're not even, they might be they have to be part of social media. Fads, if you run your business on a fad, you've got a 6-month runway, pretty much. You can't, think about the things that were popular years ago. I have a client who mentioned micro duct tape the other day, and I had not heard of it. And they said, oh my God, it was huge. Our business jumped. We did
micro duct tape?
Micro duct tape, yeah. Or tiny duct tape, something. And I asked my wife, Tara, about it. And she said, oh yeah, that was 10 years ago. And I was like, that's what they said. And Ashland Hardware had all sorts of printed micro duct tape So don't you remember we would take the kids there and they would be picking a whole bunch of different ones, and their friend Lily was making clothing out of it. And I was like, had no idea. But that lasted a year and it came and went.
That explains why I have 4 rolls of like really weirdly colored duct tape in our house. Thank you, Steve.
And really thin, maybe.
Yeah. Wow.
But we could have examples all day long, but
yeah,
Patagonia is not a trend. There are trends in the outdoor industry. I think 30 years ago, windstopper jackets were invented, and that was, you could go into a store and they were everywhere. 20 years ago, soft shell jackets became popular. They existed in the 90s, but you couldn't find it was very difficult to find really good Gore-Tex coats for a while because everybody was buying soft shell. And now if you go into a place, you'll be lucky if there's one soft shell jacket in a huge company like REI. So there are trends. You're not going to stake your business on pivoting to 100% soft shell jackets in the outdoor industry and then wondering what the next one's going to be because you don't know. What I'm coaching is essentially, I want to call it common sense, but I don't want it to be my common sense. What I'm saying is you've got a lot of people in your company and they're smart. And if they're not smart, then let's figure out who's not smart or actually who's not a good fit. Let's use that better because you don't have to be brilliant to be a good fit. And you don't have to be brilliant to come up with good ideas. Good ideas most often come from the work floor. When you go down and start talking to the people who are making the products, where Eliyahu Goldratt, who wrote The Goal, would say, this is where the value is created in the company. The people who are putting that stuff together. Those people have a lot of ideas. And so to throw something in here, what I like to teach is the agile-ish style of meeting and project management that helps with accountability. I teach MOCA, which is a way to talk about things: motivation, opportunity, clarity, and ability. And that's a way to allow people inside a framework to say things that maybe they didn't think about saying before and be able to share them with the group. And I can explain more about that in a little bit. But also, we're a big fan of non-arguable goals. Have you guys ever heard of that concept?
Yes. But I think it's going to make a lot more sense if you describe it a little bit more for our listeners.
Okay. I'll start with a hopefully short story. Paul O'Neill became the CEO of Alcoa, I think in the late 80s, early 90s. He, I think, was the head of the Treasury Department, maybe under Clinton and Bush or something. Very brilliant guy. And Alcoa was a major international corporation, also horrible share prices, company in disarray. And at the very first stock meeting, he said, everybody was standing there, all the stock shareholders, excited about what he was going to do. And he said, we're going to make Alcoa the number 1 company in the world again, and we're going to focus on one thing. What's that going to be? He said, we're going to focus on worker safety. And there's literally stories of people who were in that room who left and were managing mutual funds and sold their stock in Alcoa. This guy's crazy. But what he knew is this was what he called a non-arguable goal. And he knew how you treat anyone, how you treat everyone. And they had high turnover, they had high injury rates, and they had low quality materials coming out of their manufacturing facilities. And the way he fixed that is he said, look, everyone who works for this company around the globe, they matter to us. And the way we measure how well we're doing in their eyes is by measuring number of worker days lost to injury or sickness. Because when you have people who are in a workplace that they don't like, they're going to take all their sick days every chance they get, and they might take extras. And their turnover rate is going to be high. So he said, we're going to start treating our employees better. This is how we're going to start. And he gave out his phone number. He said, right now, every manager, every director, every department in Alcoa around the world has an unlimited budget for safety issues. And you don't have to go to your superior if you're in charge of the department to fix something. And if you work at any one of these companies, you're an employee, and there's something dangerous and you've told somebody about it and they don't fix it, you call my number. And they actually had the guy in Mexico lost his arm because there was a line of paint around a machine that was spinning around, and everybody told him, you've got to put barriers here because this is the main corridor for all of the forklifts, and someone's going to get pushed into that machine. These paint lines good enough. Well, that guy got fired. So that non-arguable goal, you can look at the stats. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I used to, but Alcoa was a major thriving and profitable and more profitable company throughout the 90s because of that singular goal. So what we teach, we have a non-arguable goal, and it focuses on the concept of an externality. And that term was invented in the late 1800s, but popularized in the 20s by an economist who basically said an externality is an effect you have on someone downstream who wasn't expecting that to happen to them. Now, you can take that literally and say downstream, we're pouring chemicals into the river, somebody down the stream is getting cancer, right? But also there are financial externalities. There are externalities that we know about now that didn't exist in our heads. For instance, carbon footprint. Do you guys know how long that word's been around and how long we've been measuring it and where it was invented?
Not as long as we hope, right?
Yeah, I don't know that it's been in my purview for that long.
And what did you say, Dave?
I don't think it's been as long as we think. Am I wrong?
A little bit of backstory. I went to UC Irvine, where in the 70s, 80s, that's where the majority of the research was telling us, at least some of the more vocal, was telling us about the ozone layer and climate warming and stuff. But the term global footprint was first used by a British vegan cafe or bakery in 1999.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Right?
Holy cow.
So it's 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Literally before that day, no one had used that term, at least anywhere on the web. And there was nothing, you can't measure something you don't know about, right? There's so many examples of that. You're playing out every day. Like, do you guys know what a PFAS is? It's basically Teflon. It was invented in the 50s.
Oh, yep. Yep.
Miracle chemical or material. Nothing touches it. Nothing sticks to it. It's what Gore-Tex is made out of. So there's plenty of medical sutures and all sorts of things that are made out of it. There were a lot of waterproofing materials that you spray on your coats, what they call DWR, outer industry term, durable water repellency, all made out of PFAS, mixed with something to like make it stick to your coat. Water would beat up. Turns out PFAS is what we call a forever chemical. We didn't know there were forever chemicals. That term itself isn't very old. The scientists in 3M knew that Teflon was a forever chemical in 1952. They just didn't have that concept, but they knew that they just invented something that was so inert and so slick that it was amazing. And we've used it. Now we know that every single person here listening to this, every person in the world has PFAS in their blood. You can go to the top of a mountain and
what?
Yeah, you can go to the top of a mountain to a place where there's a single pond 100 feet from the top of that mountain, and you can test it and you will find PFAS in that water. And we now know that's an externality that now we know is an internality. We know it exists. The only way you can get rid of PFAS in your own body is to give blood, because your body cannot remove PFAS. So when we test, so
now I'm going to have to go give blood later.
I know. But the point here is there's things that we always measure. You run a business, you want to know what your cost per item is. You want to know what your payroll is as a percentage of sales. You want to know what your investment in marketing is. And you want to know how long your product lasts. These are all things we think about, and we try to internalize them. And if you could measure how long your product lasts, you might congratulate yourself to be able to say, wow, they used to last 3 years. Now they last 20 years. And our clients appreciate it, and our sales have tripled. You could be one of those people that says, they last 3 years, let's make them last 1 year so they buy more often. That's just not a model. Now you ask, how do I do that? I just said, that's just not a model I want to be a part of. I don't think that's ethical. Say you want to save a penny? Plenty of companies in the world have saved a couple cents and killed people because somehow that's an acceptable risk. And my guiding light, I think both in Globally Conscious Leader and .com Jungle, but mostly what I talk about at Globally Conscious Leader is the granddaughter effect, or I call it the granddaughter policy. If you don't want this happening to your granddaughter, don't do it. If you have a factory in China and there's somebody that works there and their granddaughter lives downstream from them, and you find out that manufacturing facility is pouring dangerous chemicals into the river and that employees or anybody is getting sick, you need to find a new manufacturer, or you need to say to them, if we're going to be partners, you're going to change everything that you do. That granddaughter is just as important as your granddaughter. That's, to me, the guiding light. And the non-arguable goal, to sew this up, that we teach is 0 unmeasured externalities. Now, the key about this is a non-arguable goal is often completely unattainable. So I have no problem saying 0 unmeasured externalities. It doesn't mean that you have to measure everything. It doesn't mean that you have to fix everything, but it means that as a sense of corporate and personal responsibility and ethical process inside your company, you're actually going to be engaging everybody through an agilist process in every one of their departments by asking the question, what don't we know yet? And this question is applicable to the R&D department. Even if you're not talking about materials and chemicals and whatnot, R&D department might be asking about, what don't we know about the user experience? What are we missing? Oh, the product we make, it does this thing really well, but it creates a notch in every item that people run through it. When you find that out, that's an externality you didn't know. What don't we know? Let's figure out, how do we design this so it doesn't do that? So even in marketing, how do we do this better? What don't we know?
Right.
We just found out that most people who buy our product are 46 years old and liberal arts majors. You need to know that kind of thing.
Well, that's especially for marketing, that seems to be a great fit for AI tools like ChatGPT and all that stuff. You can literally, and we do this with our clients, we load up and say, what assumptions haven't we made, or what questions do we need to ask that we haven't? And that tends to yield some very interesting and helpful results. So that's one way that technology can help.
Oh, yeah.
That's for sure.
And technology, AI is what's interesting and it's scary. I use it every day. I use it for my clients to develop basically all of their branding docs these days. And it's fantastic for that kind of thing, because I can point AI using different tools like directly at a client's about page. I can upload information about their core values. It doesn't even have to be well written. It just has to actually be a sentence. And AI can spit out these fantastic branding documents that tell you how to talk to your unique customers, your ICPs. And you can then basically say, we want to start writing emails to these folks in a language that makes sense to them. Because you're going to talk to a hunter in Montana differently than you're probably going to talk to a teenager in LA. I use AI for my clients for content, but I don't think I've ever produced an AI document that wasn't heavily vetted and edited before it went out. I find it's really good at providing structure for things. Give me the structure for a book on this, or a pamphlet on this. And then my clients can say, oh, that totally makes sense. I'm gonna talk about adhesives and how they work in manufacturing seats in the auto industry. AI is definitely a tool that's useful. I try not to think too much about AI robot dogs that are engineered to kill. Don't want to be a conspiracy.
We'll have to bring you back to talk about AI robot dogs. And
I know I saw a show where I was like, that could happen.
My goodness. I think the biggest takeaway that I'm getting from this, Dave, is that we need to have longer episodes, because I've found the last 10 minutes he was throwing haymakers of truth bombs of things that I want to writing down and researching. How about you?
I feel like we've got a solid part 2 in here where we get really nerdy about the intricacies of game and theories and coming up with how AI can work better, and realizing how deep you can go and thinking for your grandchildren across everything. I think that's, wow, fascinating.
I'd love to really explain 0 unmeasured externalities. And because like I said, tell people, like, running a business is hard work. Running a good business is not harder. It's easier. And if you can have a couple simple tools, you don't have to be a psychology major. You don't even have to be a good communicator. You just have to understand a few simple things about human nature and try and create the best culture as possible, and understand when you make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But if you have a set of core values that are a guiding principle, then they're going to come up every day in your business, either as a really good process and happy employees, or as somebody saying, hey, wait a second, that's not in line with our core values. Right. Even like maybe the way you're talking to me right now, like, using Mocha. I'm not motivated to actually do this job because you're yelling at me right now. And I didn't give you permission to yell at me. And I want to be motivated for this job because I really like it. So is there another way we can do this?
Yeah, if we can come up with a way, and I think all things being equal, anytime you can all feel good about the job that you're doing and the products that you're producing and the way you produce them is far better than trying to squeeze an extra penny out of something.
Get more pennies doing it the right way.
And that's being globally conscious.
Yeah.
So, I love this.
Yeah, and it's a little crazy right now because the world feels a little reckless, but the world might change, but our core values should not.
Right. And it's never been more important that everyone stands up for doing the right thing. So, and it's going to be smart and better for the world as a whole.
Agreed.
Awesome. Steve, we always like letting people give a self-promotion.
Naked self-promotion.
Right. So how can people find you and keep in touch?
You can go if you're having trouble with the systems and the culture at your company. If you need systems help, I'm going to say you probably also need the cultural help and vice versa. But you can get in touch with me at the website dotcomjungle.com. There's a contact form there. On the Globally Conscious Leader, it's a very long, but as long as you can remember how to spell conscious in that long thing, you're good. You can find us, Google us. There's a contact form there. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn under Steve Rice. And I'd love to chat with anybody. I really want to help businesses be better. I want to help people be better. And I want to learn from them. It's a two-way street. I'm motivated to do this because I get a lot more information and clarity from new clients than they do from me, I think. And that information gets passed on to all my other clients as well. So.
And just remember, if you are being chased by a homicidal AI-controlled robot dog, a good way to get them to slow down and change the prompt is by asking it to spell conscious.
That's right.
So, Steve, thank you so much. Dave, thank you as well. This has been another episode of Dial It In, produced by Nicole Fairclough and Andy Witowski. And much like Tony Kornheiser, we are also going to try and do better the next time.
I love Tony. I love you guys. Thank you. It's been a distinct pleasure to be here. I appreciate you all very much. You ask great questions. Good people. Appreciate being here.